Tuesday's Just Baseball show is brought to you by Mount Sinai in New York, the Mayo Clinic, wherever we got to go to get MRIs done. Injury report. And it's not just, oh, this guy's hurt, this stinks. What we're going to try and do is give you a contingency plan for each team as it relates to each guy's injuries. So we're coming to you with problems, but we're going to try and also come to you with solutions. They might not be good solutions, but they're the realistic solutions, and you have to be okay with that. Jeff, Aram, Just Baseball show, Tuesday, June 18th. It's brought to you by BetMGM. One of my pet peeves, which I know you know, and I think it's become one of your pet peeves too, is people posing problems and not having a solution.
Yes.
We get to do both.
Yes. I always preface with an apology when I do that on here, because there's going to be times where I think you kind of have to do it on a talk show, but because we got to just talk about what people are talking about. But in general, really annoying. And I try to avoid doing that for obvious reasons. That's why we're going to try to give you some solutions. However, also annoying when you try to give the solution and people don't like the solution, but they ask for your help. I'm not talking about that in the lens of a show. That was more of like a life thing. Like, I want your help. Like, can you, what do you think about this? Give you my thoughts. And then, nah, I don't like that.
It's like, oh,
okay. All right.
Yeah. I'll go F myself. Right?
And then they'll come back and ask you for help a couple of weeks later still. So it's like, and then rinse, repeat. I'm good on that. But on the baseball side, you can totally hate our contingency plans. That is totally allowed because you might have a better one. And if you have a better one, let us know in the YouTube comments. I do think you have to be really realistic though, either if it's a short-term plug, or if it's a long-term thing, then we can be a little bit more ambitious. We'll provide both. But as people love to talk about the Dodgers swinging for the fence, even more so than that, they fill with low-cost, sneaky additions. And it's sometimes a turnstile. We just talked about Kevin Biggio last week. Like, they will do stuff like that even more than they're going to go get the Scherzer, Trey Turner. So, I think it's fun to talk about all aspects of that. And I also think the state of the ball club makes a big impact on that. Of course, Dodgers perpetual buyers, but if you're looking at like the Atlanta Braves, we're going to get to that. They're going to add. They're 7 games over, and they're the Braves. They're of course, and the NL is weak in general. They're going to walk into the wild card unless they just continue to fall off a cliff here. But do they add as aggressively this year? Maybe not, because they could be honest with themselves and say, hey, the World Series might not be as likely this year as it will be next year. We might as well kind of keep our resources together, especially now that 2 of their best pitching prospects are on the shelf. When you look at Owen Murphy with Tommy John, and now, unfortunately, Hurston Waldrep with the elbow inflammation.
Yeah. So we're going to get into a lot of different team scenarios, but let's start with the Dodgers. You kind of teased it right away. Let's get into Mookie Betts, man. And we mentioned it on yesterday's show, fractured hand. He's not going to have surgery. Dave Roberts said he will miss some time, or like a good amount of time. I think some means a lot in that case. Some can mean different things based on when you say it. Some time, I think, means longer as opposed to shorter when it comes out of Dave Roberts' mouth in regards to Mookie Betts. I saw...
Sorry, real quick. Sorry to cut you off. But like what you said is so true, where it's like he's going to he'll miss some time, or like he's going to miss some time.
He'll miss.
And you wonder why international players use translators even when they speak good English. Like, sorry. Anyway, continue. Or the no, yeah, no. Like that's a whole nother thing too. The kids these days, I might be a little bit guilty of that one too. But
yeah, but like, I don't know. I'm totally with you. It's so ridiculously confusing. You have to understand the tone of it, and you have to understand who you're talking about. But Mookie Betts' fractured hand, I saw an ex-doctor, a Twitter doctor, not like an ex, like a former practicing doctor, a Twitter doctor.
Another English problem here.
Yeah, right? I saw a Twitter doctor say that Corey Seager missed about 2.5 months when he had a similar hand fracture in 21. So if we're looking at 2.5 months, we got to find a shortstop for the LA Dodgers. And Kevin Biggio's not going to be the guy. Lux, like I think we've figured out by now that he's not going to be the guy. You're shaking your head adamantly like, no, anything but Lux. Max Muncy has a strained oblique. Even when he comes back, you're not moving Biggio to short. So I want to look at the internal options, and then I want to tell you what I think the best course of action is. Mookie is out. That stinks. You have, I think, 3 options in Oklahoma City right now. Trey Sweeney is the one with prospect intrigue, but Sweeney has showed signs of youth and maybe struggled in AAA. A guy that was viewed as excess by the Tigers, Andre Lipsius, is hitting the ball pretty well in Oklahoma City right now. You could make that move. And then Austin Gauthier. I think it's Gauthier. Utility guy, been around, climbed level by level. Think Ryan Noda, think Ryan Ward. That's kind of what Gauthier is.
Mm-hmm.
That's not sexy. That's not LA Dodgers.
No, and since he's gotten to AAA, Gauthier, I don't think he's played a single game of shortstop. He played exclusively shortstop in Tulsa AA, but since then has been second, left, a little bit of right, a little bit of third. Seems like that utility role. So from that lens, I think you can pretty much X him out. Trey Sweeney, and honestly, what it comes down to for me is I look at this player and I say, is he better than Miguel Rojas right now? The answer with Sweeney is probably no. He's probably got the best chance of the names that you mentioned. But we were joking about this on the call-up. It is absurd if you take Trey Sweeney's numbers away from Albuquerque. And it's not that he doesn't play his home games in Albuquerque. They just happen to play road games there semi-frequently because it's not the biggest league in the world and it's one of the stops. But it's still like absolutely insane that how much of his offensive production has come from Albuquerque. And that's why I think his home OPS is 705, which in the PCL, by the way, is really below average, like significantly below average. His away OPS is 770, and I guarantee that the majority of that is being brought up by Albuquerque, which might as well be Denver in the Mile High City with the way that the ball flies out there. So I think there's a lot of concern that you'd bring Sweeney up to the big leagues and he'd get blown up to a degree. It's a guy that's, really only producing in one spot in the PCL at this point. And he's not the best defender in the world, whereas Rojas has been a good short-handed shortstop for a while now. I think on the surface internally, I mean, unless you have somebody else in mind, to me, it seems like the most obvious option here is just to get Miguel Rojas some more run. He's older, no doubt. And if it was, him playing every day for the rest of the year, that'd be more of a concern. But if you don't want to go out and make a trade, I do think he's probably your best option at this point because he's going to pick it. He's never going to give away at bats totally. Like, it's not like he's a black hole. And he's been above average offensively because they put him in spots for success, and he's succeeded so far this year. But even if he's not, like, I still think that he can fill that role fine and give them that defense there. But as we talked about in the past, it seems like they prioritize offense a little bit more nowadays on that left side of the infield. And that's not what Rojas is going to give you much of.
No. Trey Sweeney, by the way, I have the numbers against Albuquerque. 17 games against Albuquerque. Sweeney is slashing 426, 535, 882. How many homers does he have on the year?
10.
He's
what are 7?
7 against Albuquerque. How many homers does Ryan Ward have on the year?
Ryan Ward?
Yeah.
He has, man, I can't believe he's still on the system. Ryan Ward has 19.
He's got 9 of them in Albuquerque. Ryan Ward, 15 games in Albuquerque, hitting 394. Ryan Ward, I'm stunned he did not go in the Rule 5 last year.
Yeah, I thought he'd kind of be that. He's cut from that Noda cloth.
He is Noda. He's Noda Part 2. But Trey Sweeney, 1417 OPS in 17 games against Albuquerque. It's absolutely insane. But I think the clear-cut answer is trade for Paul DeJong like now. We're recording on Monday afternoon. Like, I'd get this done on Monday evening and make this conversation expired on the baseball show.
This is a pretty hilarious conversation here that I didn't think we'd be having, especially as it pertains to the Los Angeles Dodgers on June 17th.
The LA Dodgers need Paul DeJong really badly.
Well, also, how much better is Paul DeJong than Miguel Rojas?
For the LA Dodgers.
Because I know what Paul DeJong is doing right now, but it's one thing to do it on a team that no one gives a shit about that absolutely stinks. And really, I mean, most of the time, I couldn't tell you when all his home runs are coming. I couldn't tell you. I don't really watch White Sox games unless they got a prospect pitching that I'm interested in. But I'd imagine that a lot of times they're down a bunch. They're going right after him, and DeJong's just clipping. He's getting his pitches to hit, and he's hitting home runs. He's walking at a 4% clip. He's striking out at a 31% clip.
It's pretty funny. Like, you just look at the raw numbers too. The percentages are funny, but like when you realize that in 67 games, this guy has walked 9 times and punched 75, somehow it lands even better comedically.
So that's my question. He still defends well. He hits bombs. So it can't hurt to add him to the fold. And that might be just something that they would do, period. But I guess my question is, would you rather make that move and just kind of have a bunch of mediocre irons in the fire, with all due respect, or do you swing for the fences a bit more and go get a shortstop because that, with control, because you still know that you have the shortstop problem next year too. This ain't going away. We were trying to find a way to get Mookie off a short last week before this happened, before this fluky hit by pitch in the wrist. So we'd have to talk about some of the high end options. And I think that's where it kind of segues us there. But I guess to tie a bow on this, is DeYoung that much better of an option than Miguel Rojas at this point? Obviously, from a power perspective, yes. But if he slows down, we're talking about a guy that since 2020, from 2020 to 2023, has turned into 73 WRC plus.
Yeah. Part of me is saying he's so cheap that you can convince yourself to ride the hot hand. Mm-hmm. I think he's going to cost next to nothing. Mm-hmm. And I think you can just go do that if you're the Dodgers. Because, again, you have a strong farm system. So for the price, I'd say yes. I'd rather roll the dice on Paul DeYoung continuing this hot stretch offensively. And again, he's going to defend versus running out a Miguel Rojas in his mid-30s that is not going to give you any offensive value whatsoever. And he's really just there for vibes.
Yeah. Yeah. And, he's a gregreat plug-in guy because of the defense that he can provide at all these different spots. And again, he's going to put the ball in play. I think he's a good bench player for sure. I'm with you. I like the hot hand thing because he doesn't need to plug the gap for the whole year. If they want to just wear having Mookie Betts at shortstop all year, that's fine. The one silver lining out of this wrist issue is that we were concerned about his back and lower body. He's going to have plenty of time to now get off his legs, and he's going to come back presumably fresh from the rest of his body's perspective and probably feel good the rest of the year to be able to play shortstop every day. I was more worried about the wear and tear of a full season shortstop for a guy that we were trying to, and by we, I mean the Dodgers were trying to find a way to preserve a little bit more health-wise, and then we're so desperate they had to kind of put that aside and say that's the next year problem. So I think in the meantime, DeYoung could just be that hot hitter that comes in. And I think what we're seeing is maybe last year and the year before we were worried, hey, maybe he's just totally cooked. He's just not capable of producing anymore. I think we're seeing he can still hit the ball hard, DeYoung. He can still do some things in terms of power and defense at the plate. This is one of those situations where I don't think the Dodgers would be bringing in a Colton Wong, and they're not miracle workers. Maybe a Paul DeYoung can find something a little bit like Jason Hayward did with them. And if that happens, then forget it. It's a no-brainer great move for them. So that seems to be the most obvious on the surface, low-cost buy.
Throw you another name and tell me if you think they could be partners whatsoever on this. And now we start to look a little bit higher, but I'm not going to the Bo Bichettes of the world.
No.
I'm going to Jorge Mateo. Do you think Mateo could make some sense for them? Because Baltimore obviously has some holes they need to fill, but Mateo is holding down second base part-time right now, and they're shuttling Norby back and forth. Again, they run into a logjam, and Mateo is at the top of a logjam. If the Dodgers are willing to offer up something that other teams are not, they could take Mateo off their hands, and we know how good of a defender at short he is. And again, I'm going back, I fully acknowledge that, the Dodgers, as you're saying, are prioritizing offense on the left side for some reason, but if you can get a platinum glove level defender and a speed demon and plug him in at shortstop and have him be that bench Swiss Army knife for you, he's played center field this year. If when Mookie comes back, you've got another Swiss Army knife you can slap on the bench, I think Mateo could be a good Dodger.
I love it. I think from the transactional perspective of just makes sense. Guy blocked over here, put him over to another team where he's going to play immediately and can help them. No doubt makes sense. If you're the Orioles, though, clearly Mateo is a guy that they like. He must be someone that fits in. I can't speak to the clubhouse situation, but it seems like a young and fun clubhouse. He's surprisingly, one of the older guys there, but I'd imagine they like him because they would have probably cashed in on him earlier if they didn't feel like he was a plus beyond what he brings on the field. Yeah. Again, purely speculative. So I feel like they wouldn't make the trade just to make it. How do the Dodgers and Orioles match up in a way that it makes sense for the Orioles to trade at least a guaranteed solid bench piece and a guy that, God forbid, if someone goes down, can plug in and be a dude for them? I think it could happen, but I think the Dodgers would have to trade from maybe somewhere that a player that could have potentially helped them this year too. So it's got to be this kind of you scratch my back, I scratch yours that we don't usually see with these low cost swaps. because it's usually a rebuilding team that said, just give me whatever lotto ticket. I'll take anything because we need to build this farm up. And that's where it becomes an interesting conversation about how they match.
So part of me thinks that they'd be willing to add a mid-level pitching prospect for Mateo from that Dodger system, and a guy that the Dodgers may not view as part of the 2-year, 3-year plan. So it feels like a somewhat steep price, but you're getting a year and a half of Jorge Mateo. Like, if Justin Robleski in a 1-for-1 came across your desk and you're Mike Elias, what are you saying?
Oh, I mean, at that point, if I'm Elias, I got to say, yeah.
You got to say, yeah. And like the Dodgers, is he going to deter you from making a move for a Gold Glove caliber shortstop with a year and a half of control?
No.
So I'm send it in, Jerome.
Yeah. So I think that's a perfect example, because also we know the Orioles are gonna buy a little bit too, and if they have an opportunity here to bolster up the farm system as they're going to deplete it a little bit, I think it makes a ton of sense. Aiming a little higher, because I do think, that would be the no-brainer move, I think, for both parties. Is there a high prize target? Like, okay, the Dodgers say, hey, we really just, when Mookie comes back, we're taking this as a sign, even though it had nothing to do with him playing shortstop. We want to preserve him when he comes back anyways. This was just a temporary thing. Where could they go at the shortstop position otherwise? Are there any other teams that you've looked at and you're like, that makes a ton of sense?
No, I close my eyes and I can see Bo Bichette in the Dodger hat. I really can. And I don't think it's going to happen, but the Dodgers are the type of team that tax Trey Turner on in a Max Scherzer deal, and they go and get both of them for Keibert Ruiz, Josiah Gray, and a couple other guys. So part of me thinks if there's a notable jersey selling name on the market, then they're going to go get him. And Bichette in Dodger blue with Kevin Biggio would be hilarious. Yeah. But it also it's a very Dodger move where they go get the big name in the city for stars.
Yeah. To that point, I think Taylor Walls is a perfect fit.
Sure.
He just came off the IL. The Rays are in perpetual roster, just tightness, I guess. I don't know what other word to use. That could be one.
Why would you go get Walls if you can go get Mateo instead?
Oh, I'm 100% with you. I would be under the assumption that you are shit out of luck, and you got the Walls has been hurt. Didn't even defend that well the last time he was healthy.
Weird.
No, Walls makes no sense. But that's the tough part with shortstop at this point. You look across the league. And I think really it's ultimately the best bet for you is to go stopgap. And if you get a guy that has a year of control, maybe I'd rather give up a little bit extra. So it takes some of the pressure off of you to have to find that guy immediately in the offseason. And, then I think ultimately the Dodgers will probably attack that position in free agency. So it seems like the low cost move makes the most sense, allows them to stay open. But I also think Mateo makes the most sense because Chris Taylor is not filling the role that they wanted him to fill. Obviously, Kike Hernandez, they kind of brought back for the vibes, but remember his role is kind of what they would want Jorge Mateo to fill. So they have two super utility types that aren't super. They bring in another one, Kevin Biggio, who is also not super. And what? A quick aside, Jeff Passan, the GOAT, he did refer to Kevin Biggio as super utility, which spurred a thought in my mind: is how do we define who's utility and who's a super utility? So, but beyond that, anyways, Mateo could fill the exact role that they were hoping those other two guys could fill as a super utility guy.
Can I tell you what my working definition of super utility is? I view utility as a guy that is primarily on the bench. I view super utility as a guy that is an everyday player. If he's healthy for 162, he's going to play 130 plus, and he does it at a bunch of different positions.
Co-signed. It is a guy that just is an everyday player at not one position. That is super utility to me. Whereas because utility would then have the negative connotation of, oh, well, he's not a starter then. No. He's just a guy that moves around and gives David Fry, super motherfucking utility guy. But I agree with that definition to a T. But so
sounds like 111 games last year. He played 97 in 2022. So you can't call him super utility because he's not playing every day.
Yeah, he's closer there, but if he was producing really well in that spot, I'll give him the edge on the super utility, but I think that was a reach by our guy JF.
I think so. Commendable utility. Kevin
commendable
was a commendable.
Yeah, we need a middle ground utility. It's too polarizing. It's either just utility, which I think undersells too many guys, then super utility, which giving some guys too many credit. So yeah, maybe commendable. We'll come up with another word maybe at another point, and for those middle ground utility types.
What was that? I'm not thinking about Robin. Like the answer is not Robin, but what was Batman's Alfred, the guy that like was in charge of the Batcave and all that, right?
Oh yeah.
So like let's call it Alfred utility.
Alfred
Where,
utility.
like, he's certainly a key to what makes the super, but at the end of the day, like you can replace Alfred. So Alfred utility, Kevin Biggio.
I like it. Have you ever? I can't think of a baseball player named Alfred. By the way, have you ever heard of a baseball player named Alfred?
Wasn't that first baseman for the Cardinals that hit 700 homers? No, Albert.
Yeah. Yeah.
Albert. No, I can't think of one. Alfred. No, you know what? Alfred D'Elia. Hey, my name's Big Al. I'm 12 years old and I hit dingers. You remember that?
You went to the Little League World Series to pull that?
Little League World Series.
My goodness.
I know an Alfredo, but not an Alfred.
Yeah, that's a Mexico. We can go all day on some Alfredos.
Yeah, that's tough. All right, let's jump to Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Do you know another Yoshinobu? I do not.
Unfortunately, no.
He hits the IL with a rotator cuff strain.
Eek.
That sounds painful. I don't know what it means. Don't ask me what it means. I don't know. Strained rotator cuff, like when I hear rotator cuff, I'm terrified. Strained is not, it's a partial tear, but it's not torn. I saw the initial report that like they don't believe that it's season ending. But a rotator cuff issue is not, oh, he's on the 15-day IL for 15 days and then he's back. This is probably months that we're talking about with Yoshinobu Yamamoto.
Mm-hmm.
Immediate plug and play is already answered. Bobby Miller is back, and Bobby Miller is going to start in Denver this week. But as of right now, you're looking at a rotation of Glasnow, Buehler, Miller, Paxton, Stone. Kershaw is trying to work his way back. Hurt's got shoulder inflammation. May's working his way back from that flexor tendon surgery. Sheehan's out for the year. Gonsolin's out for the year. I mean, their IL rotation is a top 5 rotation in baseball.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think there's a long-term answer here. Like, I think the answer is just Miller and you roll with it. And frankly, like the Paxton deal, I know Paxton's been pretty underwhelming so far, but we were saying, why'd they do it? Now, it looks great that they did the Paxton thing and they get to run him out there every 5th day.
Yeah, which is, you can never have too much pitching. And I think this is a perfect example of that, because that IL rotation is absurd. The Sheehan blow really stinks too, because I really felt like he was going to have a big year this year. I thought it was going to come together for him. So it sucks that he's been on the shelf as well. But River Ryan, we just talked about, he might have to end up shouldering more responsibility. Probably a poor word as he comes back from a shoulder issue, but he might have to like have a lot more on his plate than maybe they would have anticipated. He's already in AAA, but they're being very careful. He only threw 30 pitches last time out, not great results. So that's a guy that may end up getting thrusted into more responsibility as well. And you know, we know that they don't want to just continue to cut Walker totally loose. Like they're going to manage him at some point too. Kershaw's going to come back, sure, but they're going to manage him very carefully as well. So there's a lot that and we're talking about a guy in Tyler Glasnow who, like, the fact that we are not even worried about Tyler Glasnow right now, like that's the guy that's sharpied in and like, okay, he's good. Again, I don't even want to put that out there, but come on, there's a reason why he didn't have more suitors and didn't have and took this extension and wasn't, you know, willing to risk it. And I think it was great for all parties, but there's a reason why he is not consensus the number 1 arm, because I think it's really just been more health than anything else. I mean, he's as talented as they come. So there's a lot on Bobby Miller being healthy and being available, and he hasn't looked great in his rehab outings either. But I don't know if they really need to go out and do anything of major note at this point. I mean, how do you feel about where they're at? Because I mean, I feel like even Landon Knack gave them some good stretches. Like Robleski, as you mentioned, if he's not traded for Jorge Mateo, could be a guy that comes up and fills in. We know they love to bump guys up from double straight to the big, especially when you want to skip them over the PCL. Knack gave them some good starts. Do they just kind of keep it internal until the deadline?
Yeah, I think so. I think even past the deadline, I don't see them really moving for a starting pitcher at all. I know Michael Grove hit the IL like right after Yamamoto, and I think right before Betts too. Somehow a Michael Grove IL stint was sandwiched in between there. It was a really rough weekend for the LA Dodgers, but Grove is going to miss the minimum. It sounds like it's a mild lat strain. I think that Grove is going to give them really important innings as a middleman, as a long man, and they have options for guys that can do that. Like they're going to get Connor Brogdon back at some point, who's dealing with plantar fasciitis. Like there are enough irons to toss in that fire to help them survive and get to Kershaw and get to maybe Dustin May if he comes back and get to Yamamoto if he can get back in September. I think they're going to be fine.
Yeah.
It just sucks that like we've got Yamamoto on the shelf 2.5 months into a $325 million deal.
Well, when the whole thing about him is just how much he throws and how available he has been and all that.
Oh, he was throwing his weighted javelins without issue the day before. Now he's got a straight rotator.
Yeah, I think rotator generally better prognosis than labrum. I think labrum just is a little bit more complicated because it's cartilage and gets sticky with that stuff. Literally doesn't heal itself. But here's my thing before we move on to some other like teams and situations is part of me says, okay, yeah, maybe they don't do anything. They've got Glass now locked up. But then you look at the pitching staff. I mean, we know Walker's going to be a free agent after this year. We know that, they have young guys that they're plugging in right now. Again, Kershaw, I imagine this might be it for him unless they keep doing this, run it back one more year. But Sheehan probably won't be ready at the year. Like Dustin May, I don't know what his time will look like, but I think you can't really pencil him in on anything. Like, would you be surprised if they went out and tried to go get a controllable arm? Like, why not add another controllable arm to the fold with higher upside to try to give this team a chance? Because I'm just looking at it and I'm like, okay, we just tried to get them Jorge Mateo or Paul DeJong. So like the lineup drops off. It's Jason Hayward. It's who I know has been fine, but it's Cavan Biggio. It's Gavin Lux. Like this team needs to pitch too. And if we're piecing it together on both ends, it's extremely talented with at the top of the lineup, Scott Hall of Famers, don't get me wrong. But if we're trying to piece together some of these gaps, do you just do that in a cheap manner and just rely on your top heavy Hall of Famers? Or do you try to give this team a shot in the ass and go get a Jesus Luzardo or go get, one of the top players or pitchers, on the market? Shortstop, we've acknowledged is thin. So I think the big swing would be for pitchers.
So I hear you. I wouldn't do it personally, and I would try to stay cheap because the LA Dodgers are anything but, and they spent $1 billion this offseason, or they commit to $1 billion this offseason. That top-heavy nature, like, listen, if you're going to spend like this and you're going to make it top-heavy, you better rely on those guys. And Luzardo is going to get pretty expensive in arbitration. I don't know if money matters to the LA Dodgers. It seems like it doesn't, but at the end of the day, if you can be cheaper and thread the needle, I would prefer to do that personally, just from like an organizational perspective. And you break camp next year, assuming, Buehler goes elsewhere, assuming Kershaw is done, and you are, stripping them of, whoever comes off the books. You are breaking camp next year with a rotation of Yamamoto, Glasnow, Miller, Stone, and Dustin May. That's really, really good.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that. So
yeah, I don't think you need to add a Luzardo to that.
No, the devil's advocate to your point about spending $1 billion. I agree. Like those are the guys you lean on, but I also think it's okay. Well, let's make sure we give them all the support that we can get them. And that could be through rentals then, right? That doesn't mean it needs to be a, Luzardo who's going to get expensive in arbitration, has his own, arm issues this year as well. And a history there. Jack Flaherty makes all the sense in the freaking world then. Bringing the West Coast kid back to the West Coast,
Westlake, baby,
and he's been pitching phenomenally. Free agent, go throw some meaningful games down the stretch. He'd be all over that. So that kind of move seems to make a lot more sense. So I'm with you. I think that's going to be a lot easier for the Dodgers to figure out because they could go get a rental and have no problem with that. The shortstop situation is a little bit more nuanced, but I think it goes without saying. I think at this point though, they probably need to do both before the deadline. It doesn't need to be a superstar, of course, but they need to go out, I think, a pitcher. I think they need to go out a shortstop. And honestly, I wouldn't blame them if they wanted to go get a veteran outfield bat either, but that's another story.
Outman's OPSing about 970.
He is, which is nice. Yeah, they're going to give him another look. If he comes up and struggles, then we might have another conversation there too.
But I would certainly hold off on the outfield bat when you have Pages and Outman in the fold. So
yep.
That's kind of where I stand. But yeah, like we've got 6 weeks until the deadline. These 6 weeks are critical to the LA Dodgers. Like, go make this move now, please. Just because of the deadline doesn't mean you have to procrastinate and wait until then. That just gives you more time to figure out who you are. But the Dodgers know who they are. They know they have spots to fill. So go make those deals. Go get them.
Last question.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have one question for you to end it
Yeah.
on this topic. One being the least concerned, and this season is going exactly how the Dodgers imagined. Their Vegas win total of 1-0, whatever the heck MGM threw it at before the year. They're on pace to crush that. Or 10 being this is a disaster, everything's going wrong, humanly possible. Where would you put this 1 to 10 on where the Dodgers maybe expected this season to go and where it's gone for them so far?
5. I think right in the middle. Yeah.
5 would be like, I guess 5 would be I would lean like 6. I think it's a little bit worse than the median outcome.
But I think that we're looking at it as being worse than it is because of the personnel issues that have come upon us right now. You know what I mean?
Correct. No, that's what I'm saying. Like, it just, things have not been really unfortunate for them. But I'm just saying the way that you were hoping it would unfold. They're 44-29, and it's still like feels like they've had some bad luck.
For sure. So I would probably like knee-jerk reaction. I'm like, 7.5.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember that they've won 44 games already. And I'm like, oh, wait, 2. So I just split the difference and I go to 5.
Yeah, I looked at that 44 number again and I went back from 6 to 5. And that just shows you how freaking good this team is because they've got way more problems than they anticipated probably, and they're still one of the best teams in the sport.
Yeah, and I'm not going to call anybody indestructible because I know as soon as I do that, somebody's going to get hurt, but it feels like a couple of their top-end talents are borderline indestructible in that lineup, and there's a reason that they haven't been on the shelf yet this year. We are going to get to the Atlanta Braves. God damn, Atlanta's been dealt some tough blows. But before that, quick break. Okay, no Acuna, no Strider. Fried missed, first couple of weeks of the season. Riley has been on and off, not the injured list, but, he spent about a week just kind of hanging out in limbo. Like, am I hurt? Am I not? I don't know. Now they've got a serious injury to their center fielder. Michael Harris is out for quite some time. Grade 2 hamstring strain, which is probably 6 to 8 weeks, is it not?
Yeah, especially, again, center fielder, a lot of responsibility out there running-wise. You're not going to ease him back into it. He plays at one speed, so it stinks. One of my favorite players in baseball to watch, and he hasn't been clicking on all cylinders this year. So, yeah, it's going to probably be a bit of time.
Absolutely brutal. Short-term answer was selecting the contract of Ramon Laureano and pushing Jared Kelenic to center. That's not a good answer. Do you think there is a better answer that is coming for Atlanta?
I think there can be, for sure.
So I think you and I line up here. I say no. I don't think there's a better answer coming. I think there could be, but I don't think there's going to be.
You don't think they're going to do it?
I don't think they're going to do it.
You think Anthopoulos says this just isn't going to be our year?
No, I think Anthopoulos is saying, all right, we're without Michael Harris for 2 months. We'll get by with Jared Kelenic and Forrest Wall in center.
Yeah, I mean, Laureano being just a vet and the way that they've another team that just seems to be a place where vets get more comfortable again and maybe turn some things around. I don't know. I don't really expect that to happen for Laureano, but he's going to get an opportunity to. I mean, Kelenic swinging it better of late definitely helps, but that should not be a guy that is hitting leadoff and playing center for you. This puts them in a really unique spot. A lot of counting on Adam Duvall to turn things around. I think it's great that Austin Riley's starting to swing it, and I think that should get them excited. I think it's great that Matt Olson's starting to really swing it. That should get them excited. Still think Murphy's going to get his feet under him. So part of me is like, okay, they can give this team a push here and then be in a good spot to where, when Harris comes back. But the other part of me is like, maybe it's just not in the cards to be that aggressive this year, and any move that you're making for a center fielder is entirely temporary. And you want Kelenic to stay in the lineup. So if you go get an outfielder, Kelenic and Harris is back, you're going to move Kelenic back to a corner. So they still have one more corner spot open, presumably, because of Duvall. And I just wonder if this and Duvall just not, I look like he might be running out of gas. I wonder if this puts them in a spot, Jack, where like they maybe go look at that controllable outfielder that can set them up for next year too, saying, hey, it helps us now, but also we knew we were going to need this help next year as well.
Taylor Ward, that guy.
That's the first name that comes to my mind.
Yeah, how many years
But
of control does Ward have at this point?
is it one more after this one?
Two more.
2 more after this
26.
So if you're the Angels, especially with the way the Angels operate, but if you're the Angels, why not wait till the deadline while more teams are just going to be jumping in there? Reds start playing, continue to stay hot. They're going to be interested. You're going to have more teams involved. And I think if you're the Braves, the only way it makes sense to go get an outfielder is if you do it now. Because otherwise, by the time the deadline comes around, Mike Harris will almost be back, hopefully. So, yeah, the more we kind of just talk through it, and the more you look at what they already have invested into a Duvall, and don't forget they added Brian Anderson as well. Yeah. A guy that plays some corner outfield third. I agree. I think they hope that one of the veterans step up over the next 4 to 6.
Yeah. 2 more years of arbitration coming for Taylor Ward. He was a Super 2 guy, so he's got ARB 3 next year and then ARB 4 in 26. So 2.5 years of control of Taylor Ward. Wow. That price might be a little bit steeper than we were anticipating. I do think that we're going to see a JP Martinez big league at bat for the Atlanta Braves this year. Like, I really do think that they're kind of running out of reasoning to go make a splash in an outfield, corner at the deadline because, you're hoping Acuna is back at the beginning of next year, and there goes that opening in right. So then it becomes left field, and if we've learned anything about the Atlanta Braves under Alex Anthopoulos, they like just trying to figure shit out in left. And sometimes Eddie Rosario wins an NLCS MVP. So, you're okay with that. And Kelenic kind of looked like the guy. Kelenic Duvall was the answer there. And we said, oh, this is the best version of left field that they've had in quite some time. So I would expect them to hold pat. And again, if I'm trying to offer solutions here, I don't have a solution because I think the solution is just kind of wait and see when Harris comes back and then move Kelenic back to a corner.
Yep, I agree. And I think maybe the only other thing that makes sense, and it doesn't even satisfy that outfield spot, is going to just get a cheap arm like an Eric Fetty, because that Morton's old and they're gonna have some openings there. I could just see them doing that as a now and next year type of move, especially with the injuries they have to Waldrop and to Murphy.
What is the return for Eric Fetty? Is it 2 top 15 prospects in an organization?
Yes. 100%. Not just because he's throwing well. He's at $7 million for next year. We got Kyle Gibson making double that. It's gonna be a solid return. I think, definitely 2 top 15 guys in an average farm. And great pickup by the White Sox there. You got to give him credit,
dude. I mean, you got to give him credit for Fetty and DeYoung. We were making fun of those deals for the year. Now it's oh wow, they look like good trade pieces.
Yep.
What do we got going here?
MVP. Fetty was the MVP.
Fetty was the KBO MVP. That was really important. So, this guy was in the KBO last year, and now he's one of the top starting pitching arms on the market. Credit to Eric Fetty, man.
Yes. He clearly found something out there, and credit to the White Sox for identifying that. I'm sure a lot of teams were willing to give him a 1-year deal. I doubt a lot of teams were willing to take a risk on 2, and it was a perfectly calculated risk.
Now, you're right. They absolutely nailed that risk. A couple more guys that we're going to talk about. Kyle Bradish. I just want to express my frustration for Kyle Bradish and for the Baltimore Orioles real quick before we try and offer a solution here. John Means, forearm issue. Missed a couple months, comes back, 2 starts in, Tommy John. I've already expressed how shitty I feel for John Means and the Baltimore Orioles. Mm-hmm. Kyle Bradish, UCL sprain in spring training, shuts down for a month or 2, looks dynamite on the rehab, comes back, looks dynamite for 5-6 starts. UCL sprain again. He's on the shelf again. If this doesn't result in an internal brace or TJ, color me shocked, because that's 2 UCL sprains in the same year. How is this not corrected by surgery? We can't do the rest in ice thing again. Absolutely brutal, a horrible blow. I feel so bad for Bradish. He's one of my favorite arms to watch in baseball since the start of last year. And the fact that we're going to be without Bradish for a little bit really, really sucks.
Well, Bradish. Oh, sorry. So I was just going to say Bradish is also a great story because it was a guy that stunk it up in the bigs for a little bit, kind of Corbin Burns style, and then figured something out and has become such a special pitcher. But anyway, sorry, go ahead.
No. I was just going to jump right to the solution. So that was the perfect place to, kind of point that out. But in terms of solutions, you just run with Povich and McDermott. Hey, we talk about the tandem in Norfolk that's kind of hanging out. Like, now's the time to see what they can do. No Meats, no Bradish means yes Povich, yes McDermott, and that's that. Can you go get a 5 at the deadline? Sure. You got to see if McDermott can throw strikes at the major league level. You got to see if Povich can accumulate outs at the major league level. He didn't in his first start. He did in his second start. McDermott needs to make his major league debut like right now. And I know like he's a pendulum in AAA based on where the command is, but dude, like he is too talented to be on year 2 in AAA at this point. So get him up, have him make starts, have him and Povich throw every 5th day, and just see what you got in those two. And those, again, we've got 6 weeks until the deadline. 6 weeks of a full-fledged view at those guys lets you know if you got to go make a move for a 4-starter or not.
And well, here's my thought, a little bit different, because I think they're more than fine to get through a 162 game season. When you look at Burns, and then Cole Irvin's been throwing well, Grayson Rodriguez is obviously throwing really well, and then Povich, Albert Suarez is throwing fine. You could piece it together because your offense is so good. You have one of the best catchers in the game that really helps get a lot out of pitchers. And then your bullpen has been fantastic. Even Craig Kimbrell has a 2-4. Like, we love to shit on him when he's not doing well. I got to give him credit. He's been great in the back of that bullpen, along with Yennier Cano. Like, the whole bullpen's really solid. So they could get by through the season, and I think still pace the National or the American League East, aside from the Yankees. But I mean, like, keep that pace and hang in there and pace the wild card and be in a good spot. But then they get to the postseason, it's like, okay, how do you match up? It's Burns, it's Grayson. That's great. But then who's your third guy? Burns, Grayson, and having a Bradish. I would take those 3 up there with a lot of teams. But now you look at it this year, like that postseason rotation, I think is kind of lacking like one impactful. So do you get the 4 to help you weather the storm so you don't have to rely on an Albert Suarez or a Chase McDermott as much, or even a Cade Povich? Or do you kind of get through these next 4 weeks or so because you got more than enough pitching at this point, and then when you do go make that move, have it be for an impactful arm, nothing more, nothing less, and just keep it at that, to where this is the 3rd guy that we would trust in the postseason, and this is what we need him for. He's also going to help us get across the rest of the season, but it's really a move for the postseason. Because to me, that's what I keep looking at. I don't have a concern about them getting through this regular season still, even without Bradish. Where I look at it is, okay, well, how does that postseason rotation look? Who gets the ball in game 3 at this point?
Yeah, I don't know. I think the answer is probably Cole Irvin if the season ended today. I think I'd be more inclined to play devil's advocate if it wasn't severe for everybody on the shelf. Like Dean Kramer has a tricep strain. I don't want Dean Kramer starting game 3 in a playoff series. Like, nope. I think Dean Kramer is a fine regular season starting pitcher, but I do not want him running out there in game 3 of the ALCS. Tyler Wells, elbow surgery, pardon. Means TJ. Bradish, maybe elbow surgery. Like, those are all severe injuries. So I go to Luzardo. Like, again, I'm with you entirely. The deadline is where they're going to make the move for a starting pitcher. And I don't think they make that move for Mason Miller. I think everybody immediately wanted to put Mason Miller on the Yankees, the Cubs, or the Orioles. And I was ready to put Mason Miller on the Orioles a couple weeks ago. But that was before Bradish went down. That was before Means went down. Hell, I think that was before we knew Wells was out for the year. So now I'm like, let's go get Jesus Luzardo.
Yeah. And they already had multiple offers out for Luzardo over the last calendar year. And I think that's been pretty well documented. But yeah, they've gone back and forth on several different iterations of packages, because that's clear that the Orioles, wanted to go get a Luzardo. And I look at it from this lens too. Luzardo at this point going to be cheaper than a Crochet. And it seems like the Orioles and White Sox couldn't line up on a Cease package. They're probably not going to line up on a Crochet package. Seems like it's that perfect middle ground for them, to where Luzardo is the guy that can get that ball game 3 for you and be a phenomenal option, but at the same time, isn't going to make Mike Elias lose as much sleep from a trade package perspective as a Garrett Crochet would. Because at the end of the day, though they've been a little bit more aggressive, Mike Elias does not like to push the chips forward too much. Takes a lot of pride in the farm system they built. He's a little bit afraid to swing and miss at this point. Think that he might be a little bit more willing to when the package isn't as ridiculous and you're going to have that inevitable 40-man crunch and players that are blocked. So the Marlins could line up on a deal with just guys that are blocked by, just literally just blocked in AAA. And they could put something together for Luzardo there. So that seems inevitable to me. And I don't know if I could really even find anyone else that makes nearly as much sense, because you go floating, a Jack Flaherty and guys like that. Like at that point, I don't feel that much better about Flaherty grabbing the ball in game 3 than maybe some of their internal options who have more of a rapport with their staff and with Adley. So it seems like it's Luzardo or who else, right? Like how many other arms out there are really, again, I used it with the Orioles here. It's, can they take the ball in game 2 or 3 of a postseason game? And I feel like either I'm matching my opponent or I have an advantage. Other than Luzardo, who else says that to you?
Crochet. Like, again, I think they're down to 2 options at that point. I'm with you that Luzardo is somehow, we're talking about June 17th, the cheaper option than the guy that had not made a professional start before this year. But they both have 2.5 years of control remaining. The difference is price point. Luzardo's making 5.5 this year, and that was ARB 2 of 4 arbitration years. Crochet, he's in ARB 1. He's got 2 arbitration years left, but his get-in price point right now is at $800,000. He's going to escalate way lower than Luzardo is. Luzardo's at 5.5 this year. He's probably at 9 next year, and he's probably at 12 to 15 the year after that. Crochet, even with this hell of a year, he goes from 800 to what? 3 million?
If that, yeah, they can only scale it up so much at a time. So yeah, 100%. And that's a huge part of it. And I think also that's the injury part where Luzardo is, been a little bit diminished since he's come back from that flare up. And this is a guy that's had 2 TJs. So, I think that you look at it from that perspective, like it can get a little bit scary there if you're going to give up a ton of assets.
I think so. All right, we got 2 more. One kind of like 1.5. Anthony Rizzo is the last true injury that we got to talk about here. He's getting more tests done as we speak on Monday in New York, but he landed really awkwardly on his hand wrist, and wouldn't be shocked if Rizzo missed a good bit of time after his spill on Sunday Night Baseball. So that leaves an opening at first base for the New York Yankees. Can I point you in the direction of Ben Rice yet, or no?
No, maybe. Also, single TJ for Luzardo. I might have botched that.
I thought
single TJ
double. I thought it was double.
Okay, I just want to make sure. I never want to give a guy 2 that didn't have 2. I know he's been so many arm issues though. That's the only concern.
I'll Google while you tell me about Ben.
Okay, Ben Rice rakes, absolutely rakes, and it may be the best option for them is to go internally. Rice is a catcher, and he has made some impressive progress from a receiving standpoint and just overall. He could be a little bit better at limiting the run game, but they'd be bringing him up to play first. I agree. And that would be that's where he plays pretty much 2 out of 3 days at this point. Like it's a give and take, but it's about split down the middle of catcher and first base. Rice has plus power. He's a left-handed hitter. He really gets into a pull side. He's an Ivy League kid, so it's a unique story, but I do have some concern if he's going to swing and miss too much at the big league level, but he's continued to cut that down in the upper minors. And, so far between AA and AAA this year, he's got a 21% K rate. I mean, this could be a guy that plugs in and gives them a jolt just because of how hot he has been in the minor leagues and OPS over 900. And he's doing that while worrying about catching too. If he's just first base and really that's it, and extra reserve catcher, he can really focus on hitting when he gets up to the big league level. Might make it a little bit easier of a transition for him. He's hitting so well that he has a good chance of just earning himself that opportunity with Rizzo out.
Yeah. Jesus Luzardo, by the way, won Tommy John.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness.
Left forearm strain planted him on the 60-day in 22. So that might.
That's what it was. That's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah. So I do think that the answer to the Rizzo thing, though short term, could just be, hey, let's see what Ben Rice has. And, it turns into not an Austin Wells thing, because Wells was up and Wells was just there. Rice, I could see him as you go up, Rizzo's out for 2 weeks, Ben Rice gets his first 2 weeks of big league service, and then he goes right back down. And it continues the maturation process.
Yeah, and because of what he's capable of doing and from a power perspective, and we've seen him just get really hot. And you talked about riding the hot hand earlier. Ben Rice is still that hot hand where it's 20 games between double and triple, OPS over 1,000. He's walked 14 times, struck out 16. There are some inefficiencies that get exposed, and those challenges with sliders and stuff. That's fine. If by the time those get exposed, hopefully Rizzo would be back at that point. If they don't get exposed, you have another option here because, let's be honest, Rizzo has really struggled, and it's been tough to watch. Hopefully the time off and getting back will help him some. But I think at this point, they might need to start looking at an option that can help them down the stretch beyond. I don't know that they're probably going to live and die with Rizzo, especially with how important he is clubhouse-wise. So if you're not to go make an outside move, that would probably upset Rizzo in the clubhouse. Have an internal kid come in and get an opportunity. And if he shows out really well, he could end up being someone that eats into Rizzo's playing time if he continues to struggle. It's not like they're full on the bench. We got spots for Jahmai Jones right now. We got Trent Grisham still with a spot on that bench. They could put Ben Rice, I think, on that bench. Yes, it would be weird to have 3 catchers technically, but Rice could be looked at as a lefty power bat first baseman that is coming off that bench.
Yeah. The last guy that we're going to talk about real quick is Corbin Carroll, and there's no official diagnosis just yet on Carroll, but apparently he tweaked his left side. He was removed from the game on Sunday. More imaging done on Monday in Arizona. So he may join the team in D.C. He may not. So Carroll, it sounds like it'll be a limited IL stay if he does hit the IL, but if there is, an oblique strain and he's out for a couple of weeks, how do you remedy that? Carroll, at this point in 70 games, hitting .213 with a 612 OPS. So, it might be kind of nice to just get a couple days off here and just mentally reset as well as physically reset. But I think the immediate fix is already here. They've been missing Alek Thomas for a long, long time. But Alek Thomas just started a rehab at the complex. Apparently, he's going to scale up to Reno, and he should be back within about a week and a half. So it would just be a time buyer like Jake McCarthy gets full-time ABs, that kind of thing, and wait for Alek Thomas to return. Yeah,
and that's where it's nice that they have those outfield options, and McCarthy's been playing well, so that helps a ton. It does stink, though, with Carroll because it felt like he was starting to show some signs of life. Yeah. Last 20 games, 773 OPS. If you look at the last 10 games, a 922. Small sample size theater here, but we couldn't do that with any stretch of games earlier this year with Carroll. So it's been really nice to see him get going, and it just feels like rough timing, but maybe it gives him a little bit more time now to look at what's been working over the last couple of weeks and maybe what wasn't working before. But talk about dire, the Diamondback situation. Talk about the 1 to 10 scale versus how things have gone for them versus what they may have anticipated. It's got to be a 9.5, right?
It's got to be a 10, dude. Gallen's on the shelf right now. He just threw a 35 pitch bullpen or something the other day. Man, with Gallen out, with Carroll maybe out, with Lawler
and struggling
again in the minor leagues, and struggling. Alek Thomas hasn't played the entire year. Erod, this is a 10.
It's 10. J-Mod can't get outs. Eugenio Suarez is getting phased out for Blaze Alexander. It's Gabby Moreno. Honestly, I love Moreno. If he was on any other team, people would be probably complaining about his play a lot more too.
We were arguing Moreno versus Francisco Alvarez, and now we have our clear-cut answer, and one of them hasn't even been playing. You know what I mean? It's crazy that we side with the guy that wasn't even playing at this point. And again, really like Gabby Moreno too, but he has been not good this year. It's crazy to think that our 2 reigning World Series participants are 2 of the 4 or 5 teams in Major League Baseball that's panic meter is at a 10.
Yeah. I think the D-backs specifically, they need to look in the mirror and figure out what's going on because there shouldn't be that many young players struggling to find it and that many veterans lost trying to regain it. And that starts coaching everywhere. I know like a lot of these guys control their own destiny, especially when you've been in the league for a while. But I think there's a lot that can be said about the way the D-backs are kind of going about things there, because this many guys shouldn't be this stuck. So I don't think they need to make any moves there, obviously. And I'm fascinated to see how they approach this deadline. I think it's going to be doing Zippo, not selling or buying, just Zippo and hoping. But I mean, they're just brutal for Carroll. Just brutal.
Good thing is the National League sucks. Really bad.
Yeah. I mean, is it good or bad that the playoffs are expanded in this sense? Because we did see that the D-backs go and make that run. But like you have a chance for like a really bad team to get in this year in the National League. Like,
the Washington Nationals are currently holding down the second wild card spot, if I'm not mistaken.
You are correct. They are tied with the Padres.
Yeah.
Like if that happens, all of the people that were anti this, which I was not, I still like it. They get some points on that one, but I'm still pro. Reds are making the run. Reds are going to make it happen, and I think they get in there. But like the Cardinals, we've been clowning them all year, and they're comfortably in right now. Like they're in the Cubs, 2 spot. Man.
The Cubs, we've been clowning them all year. They're a game out of a wild card spot.
They stink. I'm sorry. They are the most frustrating team. They should be running away with it in that Central.
I think so. I latched on to Peter's idea that he posed last week on yesterday's show. I was like, I think I might be with you that the Cubs are just not that good.
Yeah, not running away with it in the Central. They should be running away with it in the division and for the second spot in the Central. Yes. Yeah, they just might not be good.
They might not be good.
They are a frustrating ass watch. I'll tell you that much.
Really important announcement. We restocked the rope hats.
Yes.
Go get
We did.
JustBaseball.com, one-stop shop for everything editorially and literal shopping. Go get yourself some merch. Go check out all of our wonderful shows on the Just Baseball Network. And some assortment of us three. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.